Today I'm going to show you how to make your own character build. You can either use the turnaround that I provided, or you can design your own. First, we're going to start by importing the turnaround. So go to File, Import to Stage, and navigate to the folder where you saved it to, and then select your file. It's just a JPEG file, and hit Open. You probably won't get the pop-up that I just did. It was because this is already in my library on Flash. But since you're importing this for the first time, you shouldn't have that happen. And I'm just closing any windows I'm not using right now. So, I'm just going to bring this one down here. You can just kind of drag the windows around to wherever you want them. Whatever's comfortable for these. Okay, and now we're just going to scale the character to a reasonable size on the stage. And since we have this set up as a HD template, this means that whenever we're finished, and whatever character size you have here is how big it will be on screen as a default whenever you bring it into a scene to use. I guess this doesn't really matter a huge amount. Just make sure it's not like ridiculously huge or super tiny, since we need to draw on this and we don't want it to be too awkward. So maybe around, just gonna put it around this big. And we're gonna name the layers. It's always good to name your layers something, because you don't want to get it all confused later or anything, especially when you get a lot of layers. And we're also going to name this, like name the file itself. It's always good to save often as possible because Flash is pretty finicky sometimes. And you don't want it crashing on you after you've done a lot of work and have to redo it. Okay. Now we're going to start by making a new layer. And for this one, it's going to be the main. We're going to do a few things here. We're just starting with the front view today right here. We're not going to worry about the other views just yet. This will probably take us quite a while to build anyway, so we also don't want a 5-hour tutorial or something like that, depending on how long it can get. I have some swatches set up here. I can save them so you can import them for the character colors for the one I'm using, but you can pick your own colors for whatever you build for your own character, or this one. I don't particularly care. You can do what you want. If you wanted to add these colors, you click Add Color, and then you navigate to wherever the swatches are saved, and then you hit Open, and it will open it up like this. Okay, so we're going to zoom in on the face, and I decided to do this with smooth lines from the line tool. If you want, you can paint in lines like you can have a rough line like this, and just trace off the outlines that way. I've kind of worked in TV shows that are both ways, and I don't know if there's a particular advantage of one over the other than like my personal preference. I think I like the line tool better. But that's what it might look like if you're doing a rough lines, but then you usually have to go back and like tidy it up, and I find that frustrating, so that's why I usually use the line tool. And in the properties panel, you'll find all the settings for your brush tool. So there's like size over here, and how smooth you want the lines to be and not to be. I also have a drawing tablet, which might make things easier for me if I was drawing it roughly like that. I'm going to use this tool here to do the head, to trace it off with. And it might also make it easier for anyone who's not using a Cintiq or tablet. So this way you can just use the mouse if you really wanted to. So I'm gonna make it to the approximation of how big her face is. Put it on outline mode just to see where this is going. And we're just gonna try to trace off her jawline right here and the underside of her head. But make sure it doesn't come up past the hair or anything. Okay, let's take another look at how thick those lines are. And it just turned white for some reason. That seems to be a flash glitch lately. I don't know why it does that. It doesn't seem to have hurt anything, it's just a weird flash thing. Just taking the color out for a second so I can get a better look of how thick this is. Just gonna go for trying to match the cleanup. So I'm fairly happy with this. Might make it a little thinner. There we go. Maybe something like that. Then if you want to make some very specific tweaks to it, we can just turn the transformation tool and down here, the envelope tool. Select that so we get all these points. And then we can just drag it around a little bit to match that exactly. And I'm not going to bother naming this just yet. We're going to select this, hit F8, and name this like your character's name, then underscore, then head, then underscore, and then face. Because this is going to end up buried inside a couple other symbols, and we just want to keep it all organized. So I decided to call this character Mia. And it's going to be inside of her head. And then this is going to be her face symbol. And I'm leaving the pivot point in the center here because that's the most logical place for something like this. We won't be really rotating that face piece or anything like that, so it doesn't really matter. Okay. So if we go inside of it now, we're inside of the symbol we just made. Let's name this the face layer. Go back out, and this one's, we're gonna select the symbol here. It's the outside of the symbol that we just made. Hit F8 again. I'm gonna go Mia underscore head, and that will become the head symbol. Now we just need to go over here, and we're gonna put this to play once. I know we haven't set up any of the features or anything like that, and there's no timeline in it yet, but that's something to catch really quick because there's nothing more frustrating than having everything, like forgetting to set up certain pieces the way they're meant to be. For the most part, everything is set to single frame. So if we go inside to the face symbol, you see it right here, and this is the face one. That should be set to single frame because when we go to make the other views, we're going to put all the other pieces of this, like the base symbol, in here. And we don't want it to start looping uncontrollably later on at the runtime. So if you don't understand now, you probably understand in a little bit once we do some other symbols. So for now, to set up like that. So this will be the head layer. So inside of this is our face symbol. And then we're probably going to put like the eyes, the mouth. All that will go in here. Just to help you get a placement for where everything's going to go. So you know for now, like this is the face, that's where the features are going to go. That's not going to stay there. I'm just helping explain. And then on the outside, we're going to make another symbol. And this is just going to be Mia's mean comp. So on the inside of this one, we're going to have like the arm layers, the body, all those other pieces are going to go out here. Which looks pretty silly right now, but we're only partway through it. Okay, so we're gonna go back in here and erase that. So this is still here. I'm just putting it to outline mode so we can see through it. And we're gonna work on the face for now. Don't worry about the rest of the body just yet. The only thing we need to worry about is the front view and her face. Make sure you save if you haven't. It's a good idea just to do it fairly often. Start with something nice and easy and put the nose in. We don't even need to fill the color in on this one because this has the color back here. But it might be a good idea to fill the color in anyway, just in case it needs to ever overlap something. I can't really see why we need to do that with her, but you never know. Okay, so I'm going to put some styles on this line to make it kind of match the cleanup drawing. Let's see what we got in here in the defaults. So I clicked on this little paintbrush thingy over here, and then I'm just kind of scrolling through. So this is what they got as default brushes. And if you double click on this, it'll appear in the style drop down. So you don't have to choose one to go with, but if you double click on them, you get options from there that like a quick shortcut to get to them. And that was left over from the tutorial on line styles. And it might have just crashed my Flash. I can't always explain why Flash does this, it's a little finicky. There we go. So the most useful ones would be Line Art Basic. So we can just click through those. And we can also make one if we don't come across something we like. There we go. So if we select both lines, and then select this one that's tapered on both sides, it should give us something approximately kind of similar. And then double click both of them. You might be able to get some more settings here. So we can go and scale it proportionately, stretch it to fit the length of this, like the line that we're putting it on. You can flip it, how it overlaps, those kind of things. I don't think there's too much in here at the moment that's going to help us out. I was wondering if they have anything on how the joints connect. But it doesn't quite look like it. You can also adjust how wide or not wide that is. That might help some. The other thing you can do if you're trying to get it to smooth out, and say you're using a different character and you want it to be nice and smooth in the middle, you can, okay, let's see what I just did. You hold down Alt, click and drag, and then you can always straighten this out in the middle. And you can just put in a new point. So if you use this tool up here, you can see where the points actually are too. And you can adjust them with these little handles. Like this. So if you wanted to round it out, you could. But that's not really what I'm going for. I'm just making sure you know it's an option. Okay, so that's her nose. Let's just grab the color that I chose for her face, and We're going to turn this into a symbol now. So I select it, hit F8, name this Mia head nose. We're going to double click on it, and this will be the line. And we're going to make a new line. We're going to make a new layer and name this one Fill. And then we're going to put the color here. Oops, that's a little bit big. I also have a very heavy hand when it comes to drawing with anything with pressure sensitivity. So drawing on paper, sometimes I just rip through the paper. It's not a very good habit. Okay. So this way, if you need to correct anything, you can either select one or the other. They're in different layers. And you don't have to worry about accidentally like painting over the line or something like that. That's why I put them in two different things. If you didn't want to leave this as a line that you can edit, the other option too is if you select it all, you can go to Modify, Shape, Convert Lines to Fills. And that will turn it into paint just like this is. Like this is paint. I think I'm going to leave mine as lines in case I feel like editing anything easily later, but you can do what you want. Also, if you just need to, you might not even be able to see this, but I noticed that there's some paint that's sticking out of the edge there. I just went to the eraser tool and select Erase Selected Fills. And I just put on the pressure sensitivity. Now I'm selecting the fill that I want to erase, and then you can just erase that, and you don't have to worry about erasing the other layers or colors or anything. It will only erase something that's selected, which is very helpful. Okay, so this is her nose symbol. Oops, zoom back out a little, that's a bit close. And now we want to set the looping to single frame, because when we go to put the rest of the views in here, we're just put like, this will be the front and 3/4 will go here, profile, etc. for any of the nose views. If it's set to loop and there's like some keyframes here and you just want it to be in the front view, her nose will start looping, and that will be really annoying to have to fix every time you start a scene. So that's why we set the single frame right now. Okay, let's set up the mouth. So we're just going to draw the mouth in. Oops. Let's find out what's going on there. Did I have this? Okay. I thought I might have had it set up with a wrong setting, but perhaps not. I think it's set to object drawing mode somewhere. Oops. Give me a second here to fix this. I'm not sure why it's doing that. Usually the button for object drawing mode is down here. So let's draw something. It might be because it's one of these presets over here. So it kind of automatically groups it like this, but we can just fix that by hitting Control B and it will break it apart. So it's not the end of the world, it's just frustrating sometimes. So I'm just going to adjust the width of this line to kind of match the cleanup of it. And I mean, we can also, if you don't want it to be tapered like that, you can also just set it back to like normal like this. The other thing, if you wanted to make it a paint fill, You can just trace it off with like normal flat lines like this instead of using the art brush. And then we can put that taper in afterwards too. I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so that's pretty close. So if you wanted to turn this into fill, you'd go to modify, shape, convert lines to fills. And you know it's a fill when it does something like that and the whole line doesn't move. Then you just need to cut off the edge. And then you can just pull these lines around and taper them to whatever amount you want tapered. Which is the other way to achieve that kind of look. Especially if you're using like an old version of Flash that might not do the fancy line settings and stuff. It's a little bit more frustrating to get the right kind of line, but it does work in the end. And it might give you a little bit more control over how tapered or not tapered it is. So that also looks pretty close. That's one way of doing it. I'm just going to go back to what I had before for lines, since I'm planning on keeping this pretty much all lines. So this is lines again, and let's see if I can get this to work. That looks a little weird. Just gonna fiddle around with this until I get something that seems to work for me. And if this doesn't work, I'm just going to do it the other way. Alright, and there's also width settings down here. I had forgotten about those. So tapering it yourself might be the easiest way to go about making this match. So it gives you a little bit more control over it. But what I think I'll do is I'll just plan this out the way I want it with the plain lines, and then we're just put all the taper in at the last minute. Just because right now it doesn't really matter too much yet because we're just putting in the basic symbols. And we still need to do like enough loop and that kind of stuff. And it'll be easier to put that in and edit it and get it the way we want, and then put the taper on last. So just select the outline you got going right now. Hit F8. Oops. Hit the Windows key. And then write in the name of the symbol. Hit OK. We're going to go inside that symbol. It's really easy to miss it by accident. So Now we're gonna fill in the color. For this, it's easiest to just select the color you want and fill it in. Oops. Preferably select it in the fill section. Fill it in. So it's right now it's on the same line layer. It's on the same layer as the line. Sorry about that. I'm just gonna cut this and paste it in place underneath. So that's on the inside layer. We're gonna make a new layer and put the teeth in here. And once again, I'm just gonna use the plain lines for now. Oh, and we're gonna draw this right through because we're gonna mask it off so you can't see the parts you're not supposed to see later. And I'll just make your life easier in the long run. So select a white or an off-white or something like that if you want. And paste that in. And select just all the teeth. Hit F8. Named it. Put it to single frame. You never know if you need to put in like a profile view or something later. And when we turn this layer back on, you can see how it's layered over each other. So the teeth are just underneath the line layer, and we got this at the very back. We also need to add in a tongue layer. And I think I spell that word differently every time I spell it. My apologies if I'm spelling it wrong. So we're just going to draw this one in. It might be easier to use the circle tool. And double click on it and F8. And fill in all that information. And now it looks a little silly, but it's a good start. So next, we're going to make the mask, and that will go right here, and it will just affect these two layers. So for the mask, we're going to make a copy of this layer here. So just double click to select it all, and I'm just going to select this back layer too. Hit copy, like Control C, and then paste it in place on the mask layer, and we're just going to hide everything else by holding down Alt and clicking this button. So select all this, go to Modify, Shape, Convert Lines to Fills. So now this is all fills. And the reason we do this is if we didn't do that, your mask is going to be off by just like a hair later, but it will look really weird. So we always want to make sure we do this first before we're turning this into a mask. So we're going to delete the black. Actually, I can show you the difference. So if you see this one's lines, and I'm going to make a copy over here, and we're going to convert this one to fills. So this one's fills and this one's lines. And now we're just gonna delete the black on each one. And if you can kind of tell where the paint goes, the paint on the one with the lines goes to the middle of this line, where whenever you have the paint with the black lines over here. So we just delete part of this. It only goes to the edge where that black starts. And that's the difference of how wide the mask would be in difference. So if you delete this line here, you see it goes right to the middle. But it won't make it accurate if you're trying to use that as a mask for this, if you don't remember to go and like convert it to fills. So in order to mask these, we're going to right click on the mask layer and select mask. And then we also need the tongue layer to be attached to that mask. So we're just going to drag it up here until it makes that little mark and drop it there. And once you lock it, it will affect it. So now it looks like her teeth and tongue are inside of her mouth instead of looking really weird. And if you want to check what they look like compared to the original drawing, you can just turn this on and off. And I'm still not going to do any fancy stuff with the, like, tapering the lines or anything. You can do it if you think you need it. Like, you could probably leave it plain if you wanted. But we still need to do lip sync later on. And I think that's going to be its own video for how to do the lip sync. I'm just going to leave this like this for now. And we also want this one set to single frame. Because once we have all the mouth shapes inside of your mouth, like once there's a bunch of different mouth shapes in here, when you do lip sync, it's going to be set to single frame and you just select which mouth shape you want whenever it changes. So that's the way you need it set up for that. Okay, now we're going to move on to the eyes. Let's just do one eye for now since she's in the front view anyway. We should be able to make one eye and then flip it and use it as the other eye. But there's a very certain way we have to go about flipping it. So make sure you just pay attention when I explain it. Okay, so we're just going to trace off the eye. If you hold down Shift, it should lock the proportions of the eyeball. And then we can just scale this around until it matches the drawing. It's close enough. Select this, hit F8. I'm just going to call this, so this one's going to be the base layer. The eyes will end up being about 3 different symbols because we're going to do one for the pupil. And there's going to be one that's going to be the outline of the eye for where her eyelashes are. And then there's also going to be where the white of the eye is underneath the pupil. So this is the first symbol. It's the eye outline. And we're just going to copy this frame and paste it above. And we're going to edit that later. I'm going to stick the pupil in the middle. So for this one, we're going to go to duplicate symbol. So I right clicked on top of the symbol, go to duplicate symbol, and just name it eye white, I guess. Put it to single frame. And then on this one, we're going to right click, duplicate symbol, eye outline. And also set it to single frame. And in the eye outline, we're going to go in and just delete the white. But since they're no longer the same symbol, the white still exists in this one, and we're just going to delete the outline in that one. So now they match up perfectly, but one has the eye white and the other one has the outline. And then we're just going to turn that layer off for now. I'm going to draw in that pupil. How we're going to do that one is This is going to be black, and then we're just add a highlight to it to give it that cutaway look. There, and that's kind of approximately what you want. You can either keep that outline or not. I don't think I'm going to bother keeping it. If I really wanted to get an outline back anyway, like say we wanted a blue outline around this, we can use this tool over here anyway. So it's not really a big deal if we delete it right now, especially for such a simple shape. So if we had F8 on this, and I just copied this because I can't remember if I put the naming scheme and those other symbols. Put this as single frame. And we're going to go back to the outline. Let's take a look at what we named it. Just making sure everything matches for how I name things. I know it doesn't seem like a big deal if you're just doing this for yourself. It makes a bit of a difference if you're trying to find something in the library later on, and you can search for like, oops, like the eye, and it'll bring up all the different eye symbols, and it'll also tell you how many times it's used in the scene over here. It's really handy for that. And if you're ever working on something where you're collaborating with somebody else, or say you got a job in animation and you're working with other people, you really should try to keep the library as tidy as possible so other people working in your files can find things and it's not a big hassle to try to work with someone else's file. So that's the pupil base, and then we're going to put the highlight right here. If this seems like it's a lot of work at the start, on the bright side, once we start doing the other layers, once we start doing like the 3/4 view and the profile view, it's just going to become a bunch of repetition at that point, which I mean can be good and kind of boring at the same time. So I'm just going to draw in the highlight to kind of match the sketch. And now it should look like there's that cutout look to it. Okay, and once you get it the way you want it, just turn this into a symbol. And I'm just gonna see what I named this one to make sure it's consistent. Oh, I forgot to turn it into a symbol. So we need to do both of this. Just gonna copy that name. And select the pupil. Just gonna add base to the end of that one for the name. It lights this way too whenever you search something in the build. If you're just looking for something that's in the head, you can search for head and it'll bring up everything that has that in the name. So that's kind of handy. That's why I'm giving it such long names, especially the further you go into a symbol. Okay, so now we're going to do the outline. We're going to go in here, and this is just the baseline. And then we can add the eyelashes over top. So I mean, we're not going to have crazy animation on the eyelashes or anything, but we can just add a bit of line thickness to that. And I think it might be easier just to select this, pull it up here, just turn off the first layer, and then just cut away what we don't need. I guess it kind of tapers right there. And then you can select this down here for the width settings. Or it's also possible to turn it into like paint fill and drag it around to make that kind of a look. If it's a line, you can just adjust over here how wide it is. Or you can leave it straight and use this and adjust the stroke. Oh, and it looks extra thick right now because I have it selected. You're just gonna have to play around with the size and unselect it to see how thick it actually is. So maybe around like a 3 or so. So then it will give you that look like it's nice and tapered and just smoothly running into that other line. So now your eye should be set up. So this way we can have her, like, see where the outline is here. I know it all looks like the same color, but okay. This way we can have her look like to the side and that kind of thing without messing around too much with other stuff. If, say, this was, her eyes were like completely blue or something, you can see here how the layers are layered, so they're overlapping. Okay. We can continue either just doing the left-hand side of her face, and then we can just flip everything at the end that needs to be flipped, I guess, all at once. Hopefully you don't find that too weird. And I think I'm gonna name this left, add left to everything that will be either right or left later on. I'm not gonna bother putting that in the symbols themselves because I'm gonna leave these as the same symbols even though we flip it. Okay, let's go to the eyebrow. Gonna steal some of the naming scheme. And I just changed the line style. You can also do that with the width setting down here. And if you combine some of these, you might get a different effect. You can kind of just see which ones you like the look of best. I think I like this one the best. And if I don't remember, you might be able to also make a copy, and like if you wanted to scale it the other way, we could also do that. Go into the edit settings, you can flip that. So now I got one of each, I think. Oh, and I turned it into a group for some reason, so we're just gonna hit Control B to break that. We're gonna make sure it's a symbol. Just paste that in and then put eyebrow at the end. Because one of the important things to remember is these all need to be graphic symbols like that. If you make them into like groups like this, like you can see the color changed here on the box too. You can't animate the groups the same way you animate symbols. So if you leave groups in a character build and someone goes to animate that later, it's gonna be the biggest nightmare to animate and you'll probably end up with a very annoyed person. Which I've seen happen before in builds in animation studios where they forgot to finish building it and then someone went to animate it later on and they animated a whole bunch of animations, so they had keys and keys and keys of stuff, and then realized that the foot wasn't actually a symbol, it was a group the whole time. They needed to change the color of it or like make one little change to the shape of it, and they had to go back and do that on every single frame or change it all to a symbol, I guess, because it was set up wrong. If it was like, if that foot had been a symbol, you'd be able to change it on the inside. Like, you just go into the symbol at any point, so you're on the inside of it, and you make the change in here. So like, say we just need to make this smaller, you could do it here, and it will update it on every single frame that frame is being displayed, instead of having to change it all individually. So that's why it's very, very important to make sure everything isn't a group or whatever that is called, an object type. You have to make sure it's a symbol that everything is in. It's okay to have paint, but it has to be inside of a symbol. It's like how we didn't bother turning this into symbols, because we're never gonna be like this. It doesn't really matter for this, because if we do move this for some reason, it's gonna be on the outside where the symbol is. Anyway, sorry about the lecture. Just gonna make sure that's really, really clear. It's an ear. I think for today we're only gonna have time to just do the head, and then we can do the body later on. I also doubt anyone wants to do this for hours on end at once. It's always good to have a break in between. And I know that after an hour my voice starts to go really funny. And I doubt you guys want to listen to that either. Oops. So I meant to select this, but for some reason it's an object drawing group, and I haven't been able to figure out how to turn that off yet. And I'm just going to break that apart. Let's just make this normal for now. Just going to stretch this to fit. Put a break in line here and here. And I'm going to use Super Transform. Just kind of get this matched in exactly. I just like my lines being super smooth as a personal preference. And I find it's easier to do it this way than to use paint. But if you want to draw everything by hand and clean it up that way, you're also, welcome to do that. I don't actually enjoy cleaning things up that much, actually. Usually the less points, like, we use the sub-selection tool and take a look. The less of these points we have, and still making it look good, is usually the better, just for things looking smooth. So if you get too many of them, it will start seeing like little wobbles on the line. Okay, let's go back here. Just wanted to turn that to outline mode. Oh, here we are. The head layer. This needs to be turned to outline mode out here. Then we can go into it. As long as I didn't lock it. Just make sure it's not locked. There we go. I just wanted to see the rest of the ear in that sketch, so I was trying to turn on and off layers until I could get it right. Okay. Another way we can draw lines instead of just using shapes is this tool too. Just gonna set this to taper on both ends. And then you can kind of just draw that in approximately, and you can also just move it around until it fits right. Once again, I'm going to break that since it's an object. There we go. Another way you can work out with, work the tapering is, you can also, okay, we're gonna turn this into a symbol first, and then I'll show you how to do that. We're gonna need some layers. Just gonna steal the naming scheme off of another symbol. Same that here. Go into this one, so this one's gonna be a line. And then we can make a taper layer. And then we're gonna do a fill layer. There was a show I worked on where everything was lines except for the tapers. So, I meant that, we leave everything lines instead of fills. But to taper the edges, we just do this. So we select one of these. You can put them on different layers if you want to organize them. It's kind of up to you on that one. Let's just start with this one. So we're going to put the caps to being square. I think that will look fine with the rest of it. Yep. And then select that little chunk and go to modify shape, convert lines to fills. And then you can just taper that one little chunk. Sorry I didn't mention this earlier. Sometimes I just remember these things as I'm going. So that is one of the solutions to how to taper things. And then that way, if you need to change anything later, it's not such a pain because you got most of the lines still set up as lines. Okay, and that tapers on this layer, and this one is over here. So let's just select this. Just put that to none on the cap. Then go to modify shape, convert lines to fills. And just kind of turn it into a point that you can drag around. And just want a quick look at how the original looks. I might not have grabbed enough of the original line. So let's go with this, I think. And it's just important to make sure it's on a different layer when you taper them. It's because if, where the lines and the fills join up will start distorting everything if they're touching each other. That's why I'm putting the tapers on a separate layer, so they're not intersecting with the actual lines. So we're gonna go modify shape, convert lines to fills. And I forgot to take the, whatever it's called, the cap off of it. It's not a big deal though, we can just slice off a chunk so we get those points. And then just go and move it in like this. This one could be better. We could probably take it from up here. And I pasted it there. That's a line, but we also just convert it to a fill before it, before I deselect and it attaches to that other one. There. So let's see if I can just tweak it with the envelope tool. This might not work. I think I'm just going to have to do that taper from scratch. And I had accidentally put on the wrong layer, which is the other problem. Okay, so we're just going to grab this, cut that there. Paste this on its own layer. Sometimes you just need to do things a few times until you get it quite the way you want it. And we want a nice straight slice out of it so we don't get too many points to mess around with. So like I said, the more points, the more messy your lines look. So what I'm trying to do is just make this a more gradual taper, kind of like in that sketch. You can also use the delete anchor point tool. So if we select this, we can just start deleting those anchor points to make it more smooth. And now it should match. And then if you do need to make an adjustment, you can just pull it around and it shouldn't be too finicky. And then if you go back with that tool again, you can also take a look at whether or not you want to delete any anchor points off the other one, like if it'll be a benefit or not, or if it looks fine as it is. So as long as it looks like it's a smooth transition from one to another. And on the fill layer, you can just paint in the same face color that your character has. I guess you don't need to select paint behind like I did. I was just out of habit. It works whenever you have more than one color on one layer, but since this is its own layer, it doesn't really matter. That was just a habit of mine. Okay, and the other thing about this one here, I might change. So it's when you get up close, you can see all those little wobbles in it, which I don't really like. So, just 1 second. I just want to be able to see the sketch itself now. So I just put as many things as possible to outline mode. Let's keep going in. There we go. So now it should be able to see the sketch. I'm gonna see what happens if I try to do this as a fill instead. Especially since we shouldn't need to change this detail again, really. It's not something that's going to be moving and we're going to be redrawing a whole bunch. I mean, you can also just draw this in by hand too, if that's your preference. I don't think I could probably get it smoother by hand drawing it, so that's why I'm just pulling the points around to see what I get out of it. But I don't know. Let's see what we can do. It's getting a little finicky. So this button down here will help you taper it. This slider will help you smooth it out. And there was probably nothing wrong with it in the first place, except that I get a little picky. Just hit and do a little bit. See how the original looked. gonna take some of the points out and see if I can get this smoother, but like still kind of match what I had before. You probably only need a couple points for around these corners. Like if you grab this tool over here, you should be able to see them there. And you might be able to manipulate them a little bit. You also don't need to be just as picky as I am about this. I probably should have just let this go. Okay, and now it should look a little bit smoother, though I was being extremely picky. Okay, now on to the hair. Let's start with the hair on the left hand side. And it's gonna also be hair right. And you want the hair elastic. And the ponytail. And that should be all the new symbols. And then at the end we just need to copy and paste the symbols that we're going to flip. Don't forget to save. Let's put the captor on for now, and I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. And I'll use plain lines for now until we get everything the way we like it, and then we can fiddle around with the styles and everything. If you hold down Alt and click, you can add a new point, which is what I was doing there. Just to get just enough points that you can draw in that shape that you like. You also can use this tool here, the paintbrush tool, if you like. I found this one works out better for me just since I can get smoother lines out of it. And then if you got like a little point like that where it's connecting and it's not quite smooth, you can just select that chunk and hit the straighten tool. And then drag it back to the way you want it. And I'll put the rest of the details in afterwards. And select what we have and make a symbol. I hit cancel there on purpose. I'm just gonna select the naming convention here. I'm gonna make sure that's single frame. And I'm gonna draw this other line in on a new layer. Doesn't really matter what you name that one for now. I might not keep that layer, but this way these lines won't stick together when I'm drawing this one in. I'm just going to put that one on the same layer. And I kind of want to make these two lines connect, just to make it a little bit easier. So then when we go to fill in the color, we can just hit fill. You can see where they're going to be, like this will be underneath the ear, so I'm not super concerned about how perfect it looks, as long as it's a section that's going to be hidden. And same up over here. Just make sure they intersect. Okay, so as close as we see in the beginning, we have to taper for now. Another option, like for this one, I don't think we can just taper it with the lines. We're probably going to need to turn it into fill. So we can also just make a copy, name it fill, and these are exactly the same now. And we can guide that one off and leave it as a line. So if we need to come back and make changes, we can just start with the line again. I'm just going to convert that to fills. And then it will do something weird, like it does half the time. Flash doesn't seem to know how to handle that. So let's put this on two different layers. Select it all. Modify shape, convert line to fills, and it seems to work this time. Okay, so I'm going to start with this one here, just matching it to that sketch. Just trying to avoid anything weird looking from happening. Or like really obvious really obvious marks for where those points are. Just wanted to look as smooth and nice of a transition into this taper as possible. Sometimes it's a little finicky. And like I said earlier, you can also just draw this by hand if it makes it faster and easier for you. Especially if you have a nice, if you're good at cleanup and stuff like that. I know people who can just boop and it looks nice. And unfortunately, I'm not really one of those people. Okay, and now I'm just going to do this one here. There, this one seems to have been a little smoother. And then you can connect it together where it's hidden again if you want afterwards. I was just trying not to connect it too early in case there's anything I needed to fix. And oh, the other option you have for your fills is select close large gaps. Sorry, close large gaps. Just hold on one second. Oops. Oh, right, I had that other layer turned on. The reason why it's not doing it in this section is because I still have this as a separate layer. So it needs to be in the same layer as the rest of the outlines. And then make sure you have the right color so you're not pasting in the wrong color. You can also just fill it behind on a separate layer if you felt like it. It's up to you. And this one, it doesn't seem to be hurting anything to leave it like that. And I'm going to drag this below the ear. And don't forget to go back and check every so often if everything was set to single frame or not. Because even I forget sometimes. Like, you just notice I switched the ear. It should all be set to single frame. Okay, and now we're going to do the hair on the other side. And now it's time to think, do we want this to be a separate symbol or the same symbol? I think it can be a separate symbol since, like, in this one we're going to put all the views of her hair for that side of her face as she turns. But her hair is asymmetrical, so I don't think it's going to matter for her. if you had a character that had exactly the same hair on this side and this side, or it was one big piece, then you'd probably want to put it all in one symbol. But with this one, I think it's fine to put in two different ones. I'm just going to set that to outline, since we're going to want to see the rest of, like it was just cutting off a chunk of the drawing there. Okay, and that doesn't even have to be too close, we just need something to make a symbol out of. And I'm going to find out what I named this one, so we can base this one off of it. Okay. Yeah, we're gonna go in here and name this line. And then we're just gonna trace that drawing. You see me trying to lock everything except for that one layer. Obviously it didn't really work because there's only one layer in here to lock. I think it was just a habit and I was being silly. Okay, and now we're going to want to taper this. So we can do the same thing we did with that other one. If you want. You don't have to save a copy if you don't want to. We could just skip right to turning this into paint fills. It's just a personal preference. I know we did this on a show before, and some people also found it extremely annoying to have all those extra layers hanging around. So I guess it just depends. But it was helpful to anyone doing revisions who needed to go back and redraw things. Since then you can, like, it's just faster to start from the line if you're redrawing things with lines than to trace off of the paint with a line and redraw it from there. Okay, that's close enough. We're gonna fill that in, and I'm gonna put this on a different layer for the fill today. And that's because now we can turn that off, and on our other layer I'm gonna just put the details. I have heard as well that one of the reasons why on some shows they'd convert everything to fills, even if it's just like tiny little details that were fine functioning as lines. And they used to do that because when you zoomed out, the lines would size differently than the fills, so you'd be able to tell the difference. I don't know if that might be an old Flash thing or if it still happens with new Flash. But I've also worked on shows where things ended up just being a mix between lines and fills, just depending on what people had time for, and no one bothered to convert everything. And I don't think it really got caught in the end, or that people really noticed. So, I don't know. Personal preference, I guess? I think this will look a little bit better if we just convert these to fills and taper it ourselves than trying to use those presets for this one. It looked kind of wobbly when I kind of tested it out. And how wide I'm making this is kind of based off of how wide of a base it has here, since it's all the same when you pull those, like the tapers in the end. There we go. And now I'm going to do that hair elastic, and that one will go below this, and the ponytail goes underneath the elastic. Getting closer to the end, which I bet is exciting. Okay, so just turn this into a symbol. Now we can just adjust this so it matches up. And then we can just put a detail layer on top. It's looking good. It's just kind of creepy that she only has half a face, but we'll get there. Now I'm moving on to the ponytail, and I think we can do these as two separate layers in case you wanted to animate this section down here independently from the other one. But first, we're just going to get the big shape, wrap it in-ish, and then turn it into a symbol. I'm gonna also turn this one into another symbol. That way, if you wanted to animate them on the inside of the symbol, you could. Let's just put a couple lines in here and turn this into the small one. And this is just like everything else where we just made a detail layer, drew an approximate line, converted it to fills. Then we can just taper this to match the drawing. Then I made a layer for the fills because I'm going to also convert these lines to fills here. It's not a complicated shape, so I'm not going to save a copy of the lines this time. I'm pretty confident that it'd be pretty quick to change this again if we needed to. I sliced a point off of like the curvy bit at the end there, just to make it a little easier to grab a sharp corner. And I think that's kind of close enough. This could probably be a little more tapered down here. I just sliced off a bit of that. Since we're not gonna see the section anyway, it's gonna be behind something. Okay, and now we're at the final bit of the face. This is going to be nearing. We're just going to, I'm going to show you how to flip those symbols correctly so it doesn't cause problems later. And I also realized that her eyebrow is layered under other stuff. So just make sure you don't lose anything like that. This is the last bit of the face. Just make sure. Andrew.
Sorry.
This is the last bit of the face. Just make sure you don't have any symbols hidden under other symbols and that everything is layered in the correct order. I'm gonna show you how to flip the eyes and the ear, and that's about it for today. So I don't think we really need to, we might flip this one here. We're gonna flip everything on the inside of the symbol. So just go into the symbol, make a copy on the next frame over, and then we're going to flip everything on the inside of the symbol. Let's go into the symbol. I'm going to make a copy on the next frame over, so these two are identical. And then you can right click on it, transform, flip horizontal, and I think I just clicked the wrong button. So right click, transform, flip horizontal, and then we can make a new layer. Name this one right. We're going to put on single frame 2 so it displays the right frame. I'm going to hide it for now until we do the rest of this eye, and then we can move them all over at once. The reason why we flip it on the inside of the symbol is if we flip it on the outside, say we just took this, flipped it out here, and then tried the tween between two keys, it would just start flipping out like crazy, and the tweens wouldn't work on it, so that's why we're doing it this way. So same thing here. It's okay to flip these symbols in here because it's really unlikely you're gonna animate these on the inside. Now we're going to do the outer part of the eye. Oh, I accidentally clicked on a layer that was locked. That's what happened. Okay, and for this one, we're going to want to leave a little bit of space, because at some point we're going to put a blink in here. So there will be a bunch of frames of this eye blinking here, and then you'll have some frames of the opposite blinking, and then you'll probably have the rest of the turnaround throughout the timeline. So we just wanted to leave a little bit of space for that. Okay, and then just flip that, which is, for everyone else, it is transform, flip horizontal. I have that set up as a shortcut. Oh, and make sure you paid attention to what frame you put on. So this one's on frame 25. So I'm just going to put 25 over here. And now we should have all of these. Just make sure everything else is locked except for the layers we want to move. Oh, and another good way to check this, put these all together. If we turn this off for a second and make a new layer just as a throwaway layer, let's copy all these and paste this here. I'm going to put this above the other ones and outline it, and then we're going to just flip that all as one. And let's make sure these two match up in position, so that you can see that this was over a little bit too far. I think that was the only thing we needed to fix. And then we can just throw this away afterwards. So make sure it matches exactly to the other eye. And then you can just drag it over. And we still need to match this up to the drawing. And the other thing is, we didn't need to flip this one on the inside, so we're just going to take that out. Lock everything except for this one layer to fix that problem where it disappeared. So we can hit Control A, and you can see the symbol is still here, but it's not displaying anything because there's nothing on frame 2. So I just put it back to frame 1. If you hit Control A, then you'll be able to select it even if you can't see where that symbol is. Let's match that up. I guess we didn't need to have it exactly a mirror image of this one in the end, as long as it matches up with the sketch. Okay, now the eyebrow. So we're just going to make a copy. Go into this. This is the same symbol still, even if it's a copy of the layer. And flip it on the inside. We're going to go to single frame, put it to frame 2. And move it over here. This one's not exactly the same as the flipped image, so we're also just gonna adjust this to match the drawing. But the reason why we did it this way was so we're still using the same symbol. So should we need to like animate her eyebrows going up and down or changing shapes on the inside, it's not flipping around on the outside, it's flipping on the inside. And the last thing now is just to do this ear. Just make sure you laid it correctly, and then it matches up with your sketch. And you can always adjust it a little bit differently for the other side if you wanted to. It doesn't have to be perfectly symmetrical. As long as everything flips on the inside of the symbols, that's all that matters really. There, and that's the front view of the face. So if we come back out here, next time we'll be adding a body to this view. And we'll slowly start building the rest of the turnaround in the future. I'm just going to make a series out of this. Oh, and before you're done, just make sure you double check that everything is still set to single frame, in case you have any issues with things looping later on when you don't want them to loop. There we go. And the one thing that always gets set to play once is the outside of the head. So I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. If you have any comments, questions, or tutorial requests, just let me know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.